The politics of the country changed rapidly between 1824 and 28, which advantaged Andrew Jackson. A number of states passed reforms changing who could vote. In the prior era, voting was restricted by property qualification. By 1828, most states had passed laws allowing most white adult free males to vote. By 1832, only South Carolina still had property qualifications for anything, in its case, electoral college electors. Otherwise, all states had abolished property qualifications for voting, New York being the last. Also, political conventions began to develop in various states, with candidates having to appeal to delegates. This made the party system much more important and powerful. The controversial nature of Adams's presidency set the stage for a new two-party system. Those who agreed with economic nationalism started to call themselves National Republicans. Nothing to do with today's Republicans. Those opposed, who used Andrew Jackson as their symbol and leader, started to call themselves the Democratic Republicans, who by 1832 shortened that just to Democrats. The idea that representatives should be independent and vote according to their best judgment began to fall by the wayside. Instead, people believed that their representatives should vote according to what their constituents would do. So politics became more entertaining. More people voted. The voter turnout rate rose from 27% in 1824 to 56% in 1828 to 78% by 1840, meaning the percentage of who does vote that can vote. This completely upended the way politicians courted voters. Successful politicians needed to mingle with voters and voice their feelings. This put wealthy elites who didn't connect as well with average people at more of a disadvantage. Andrew Jackson, however, was excellent at projecting the people's emotions and prejudices. Andrew Jackson was one of the older men to seek the presidency. Jackson did come from humble birth. Born near the border of North and South Carolina, his father died before he was born in a farm accident, so he was raised by his mother, who did her best working as a housekeeper in the Carolinas and Virginia, and she died herself from cholera when Jackson was young. When he was 13, in the American Revolution, two of his brothers were killed, and he was scarred by a British soldier who may or may not have tortured him with a saber. According to Jackson, it happened, but we don't have any other evidence for it other than his allegation. As a result, he carried a burning rage against the British and in general had a tendency to solve problems with fighting and had a very quick temper. He studied law enough on his own to become a lawyer in Frontier, Tennessee in 1787, later becoming a judge and appointed U.S. Senator, although he only did that for 8 months. He was most prominently a land and slave-owning farmer and merchant, largely possible because of a very favorable marriage to one of the most wealthy women in Tennessee, the daughters of one of the first families there, a woman named Rachel Donaldson Robards. She had already been married in 1788 to a wealthy Kentucky gentleman, Captain Lewis Robards, who treated her badly. They separated after about a year of marriage, and Rachel went to live with her mother, who ran a boarding house where the young lawyer Andrew stayed. They fell in love and got married, but complications with Rachel's divorce to Lewis Robards were apparent, and it was unclear how legal Andrew and Rachel's first marriage was. So they were married in 1791, but they got married again in 1794, which was fully legal. Jackson, after that, was appointed commander of the Tennessee militia in 1801. He became known as a fierce Indian fighter and tough soldier, leading his soldiers to say he was tough as old hickory wood, from which he got his nickname Old Hickory. He tended to ignore orders he did not agree with, but would then quickly court-martial and execute soldiers under his command that disobeyed his own orders. We know the story of Jackson's exploits at the Battle of New Orleans and in the Seminole War. President James Monroe appointed him governor of Florida in 1821-22, and then he was elected senator from Tennessee in 1822 and served for a little under 2 years in the Senate. He was nominated for president by a convention in Philadelphia, where New York politician Martin Van Buren brought together several competing political interests, and so he ran for president in 1824. Jackson had a take-charge personality, which his opponents abhorred, but the public just enjoyed with enthusiasm. His fierce will and take-charge personality is aptly illustrated by one of his most famous duels. So in 1805, Jackson had placed a bet on a horse race with a person named Captain Joseph Irvin. One of Jackson's friends made fun of Irvin for losing, and Jackson kind of joined in the ridicule. This enraged Irvin's son-in-law, a man named Charles Dickinson. Dickinson began a public quarrel with Jackson. Dickinson went so far to write to Jackson, calling him a liar in private, and then in 1806 published a statement in the Nashville Review newspaper that Jackson was, quote, a worthless scoundrel, poltroon, and a coward. Poltroon is another way of saying coward, so it's like calling him a double coward. Jackson then challenged Dickinson to a duel, according to the custom at the time. This wasn't a great idea because Dickinson was known as one of the best shots in Tennessee, and he had choice of weapons since he was the person accused, or the person challenged. So he chose pistols. They agreed to a location and met there. The rules were that they were supposed to fire at the same time, but Jackson decided to let Dickinson fire first, hoping firing quickly would disrupt his aim. So Dickinson fired, then Jackson's shot misfired. The hammer only went halfway down, so that was not considered a shot. When the smoke cleared, Dickinson was surprised that he had missed Jackson, and he was rumored to have exclaimed, "My God, have I missed him?" The reality was, he hadn't missed. He had shot Jackson in the chest, breaking 2 of his ribs and lodging a bullet near his heart. But Jackson acted like he hadn't been hit. He put his left arm in front of his chest to cover the wound. The rules said that Jackson's shot had not been a real shot because of the misfire, so according to the rules at that point, he got a free shot, and Dickinson was not supposed to move after a no shot. So Jackson then took slow, deliberate aim and killed Dickinson. That was a breach of dueling decorum. According to courtesy, Jackson should have deliberately missed with his second shot, not aimed, since Dickinson's first shot had also missed. Dueling was this weird thing where you were supposed to shoot at each other, but it was between gentlemen, and while you shot at each other, you were not supposed to aim at each other, except in certain circumstances. So Dickinson had actually won the duel because his first shot hit. Many considered the whole affair a cold-blooded killing by Jackson for taking such measured, deliberate aim after having already been hit. But the whole thing contributed to Jackson's reputation as a man of unstoppable will. When asked how he remained standing after being hit, he replied that, quote, "I would have stood up long enough to kill him if he had put a bullet in my brain," unquote. Due to the duel, Jackson lived with a bullet in his chest the rest of his life, which caused him pain uh, practically all the time. The rumor was that Jackson had murdered 12 men in different duels, but those rumors aren't substantiated. This was the only duel we know of officially.